Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, your reluctant prophet, Bill Reimer. We have currently been discussing the theme of dialectical reasoning that the radical left employs, originating with Hegel, but of course adapted to their particular needs. So as we continue this discussion on how Hegel's dialectical philosophy is affecting political discourse, it is important to get one fundamental point across. It's necessary for you to understand that the left has an operating system. Just as computers have software systems which govern how their hardware functions, so does the left have a system of dialectics which determine how they are to think and act under any given set of circumstances. They employ dialectical thinking as a tactic to further the progress of the cultural Marxist revolution. This is what they mean when they call themselves progressives. For to be a good member of the radical left, dialectical arguments must be used to progressively advance the cause of the cultural revolution. If you wonder how and why they have captured science to advance this cultural revolution, you need to understand the words of famed critical theorist from the Frankfurt School, Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse invented the dialectical idea of postnormal science. Remember how a dialectical argument works. Here we see Marcuse using science as the thesis, the cultural revolution as the antithesis, to arrive at the synthesis of postnormal science. So when you heard our leaders, which included some conservatives, state that we must follow the science during the pandemic, what they were actually stating was that we must follow the postnormal deconstruction of science which they were using to advance the cultural Marxist revolution. So I decided it was time to have a chat with AI to learn how honest its programmers will permit it to be regarding Marcuse. So I inquired of ChatGPT, who stated science and the scientific method are the enemy because they deny the existence of utopia. It answered, science and the scientific method are focused on understanding the natural world through empirical evidence and experimentation rather than pursuing utopian ideals. While science can improve our lives and address many challenges, it doesn't promise or deny utopia. Utopian visions often involve societal and philosophical aspects that extend beyond the scope of empirical science. Science helps us make informed decisions and progress, but achieving utopia is a complex and multifaceted endeavor which involving ethics, politics, and human nature. This obviously conveniently omitted the fact that I had quoted Marcuse. Then I asked, science and the scientific method are the enemy because they deny the existence of utopia. Herbert Marcuse. It answered, Herbert Marcuse, a prominent philosopher associated with the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, had a perspective on science and the scientific method that differed from the conventional view. Marcuse critiqued what he saw as the potential for science and technology to reinforce oppressive systems and argued that they could be tools of social control. He believed that the pursuit of scientific and technological progress, when driven solely by capitalist interests, could hinder the achievement of utopian goals by perpetuating existing inequalities. Marcuse's critique doesn't necessarily deny the potential for science and the scientific method to contribute to societal betterment, but it highlights the importance of examining the socio-political context in which they operate. His work underscores the need for ethical considerations and critical analysis alongside scientific endeavors to ensure they align with utopian ideas of a just and equitable society. I burst out laughing when I hear Marxists talk about societal betterment and equity. I mean, how many millions dead would it be required to give up the idea that utopia doesn't exist? Since I had previously denied the quote, it had previously denied the quote originated with Marcuse, I admonished it by saying, "But you denied that he had stated that." It answered, "I apologize if my previous response seemed contradictory." Well, it didn't seem contradictory, it was. Herbert Marcuse did indeed have a critical perspective on science and technology, as I mentioned in the previous response. He argued that these could be used to reinforce oppressive systems, potentially hindering the achievement of utopian goals when driven by certain interests. However, it's important to note that Marcuse's views don't necessarily negate the potential for science and technology to contribute positively to society. Rather, he emphasized the need for critical examination. There's the word critical examination, the use of the dialectic, and ethical considerations in their application. If you have more specific questions or would like additional information on this topic, feel free to ask this communist. Ask ChatGPT AI, this communist. In one of his early works, Marcuse argued that the objective facts are of themselves insufficient, since they ignore how they are entwined with historical human existence. This idea has to do with attempting to marry the lived experience of social reality with fact, which is an obvious use of dialectics, attempting to combine two mutually exclusive things, to marry them, then claim that they are one and the same. To the radical left, facts are not merely facts, but need to be understood as they impinged on lived experience. They argue that experience reveals connections that would be missed from an objective standpoint. Marcuse gives the example of a workplace. The experience of those who live it reveal aspects hidden to the mere observer, and a fortiori to management. These facts ignore that if managers were walking the Gemba, they would soon discover that their workforce has a better factual idea of what transpires in the production process than they do. But I will leave that matter for a further discussion another time. In conclusion, Herbert Marcuse proposed a discourse on scientific methodology and its related techniques known as postnormal science. Postnormal science is basically a manifestation of Marcuse's new modality of science arrived at by dialectical argument, the operating system of the radical left. It is relevant today since it has been used both to study and define 21st century environmental politics and climate hysteria. In this context, postnormal science has married itself with politics, especially in the realm of the current environmental challenge, a clear use of dialectical justification for furthering the cultural Marxist revolution. The utilization of political theory to justify post-normal science methodologies is so widespread today that it has totally replaced what anyone would understand following the scientific method actually means. Post-normal science is directing political theory with one ultimate goal in mind: to tear apart existing social and economic structures to achieve utopia, which, according to what Marcuse stated, real science informs us cannot exist. So these are things to think and pray about as we go further and further down the insanity inherent in the dialectical reasoning of the radical left's rabbit hole. A rabbit hole they're dragging all of society in, and me kicking and screaming. Have a great day. God bless you. Have a lovely weekend, too.